Jean Genet's The Maids, Les Bonds, is a landmark of 20th-century avant-garde and existentialist theater, combining elements of absurdism, ritual, surrealism, and psychological realism. Genet, a former petty criminal and queer icon of French literature, wrote the play as an inversion of bourgeois morality and theatrical convention. In The Maids, two working-class sisters, Solange and Claire, serve as domestic workers for a woman known only as Madame. When she is away, they perform a recurring, ritualized fantasy in which they alternate playing the role of Madame and her servant, enacting and reenacting her murder. As the lines between reality and illusion blur, the sisters become trapped in a cycle of hatred, desire, mimicry, and impotence, never able to execute their plan in real life. The play is a profound meditation on social hierarchy, mimicry, theatricality, and the psychological effects of oppression, and it continues to provoke and challenge audiences today. Setting: the play takes place entirely in Madame's bedroom, a lavish and feminine space full of luxury and decadence. The set is both realistic and symbolic, representing the opulence of the bourgeois world and the site of the sisters' psychological fantasies. Characters: Claire, the younger of the two sisters, often more emotional and submissive. She typically plays the role of the servant in their games but has deep resentment and sadistic fantasies toward Madame. Solange, the elder sister, more dominant and pragmatic. She usually plays the role of Madame in their games. Her aggression masks her own vulnerability and dependency. Madame, the employers of the Maids. She appears only briefly in the play's middle section. Vain, self-centered, and oblivious to the sisters' resentment, she represents bourgeois entitlement. Opening scene: the ritual begins. The play opens with Claire alone on stage, dressed in Madame's clothes, performing a stylized monologue. She mimics Madame's voice, gestures, and narcissistic self-regard. Solange enters, dressed as Claire, and they continue the game, a ritualistic reenactment of Madame's murder, which always ends before the act is completed. These games serve as a fantasy of rebellion and release, allowing the sisters to express their hatred, jealousy, and longing for power, while remaining within the safe confines of roleplay. The act is both cathartic and imprisoning. Middle section: reality intrudes. Their fantasy is interrupted by the real arrival of Madame, who is preparing to leave town. During her time on stage, Madame is casually cruel, self-absorbed, and dismissive, speaking over the maids and obsessing over appearances. She reveals that her lover, Monsieur, has been released from prison, possibly due to an anonymous letter sent by one of the sisters. The play never confirms who. She exits without suspecting their resentment or the danger she is in. Final section: collapse of the ritual. After Madame leaves, the sisters attempt the ritual again, but it begins to fall apart. The fantasy no longer holds the same energy. Their resentment builds into accusations, power reversals, and self-hatred. They turn on each other, unable to complete the act of rebellion. Solange urges Claire to drink poison as part of their ritual, but Claire drinks it in earnest, dying in real life rather than in performance. The play ends ambiguously, with Solange alone on stage, caught between triumph, horror, and grief, unsure whether the fantasy has become reality or if it still remains a performance. Analysis of themes and symbols. 1. Power, class, and servitude. At its heart, The Maids is a play about power, its performance, internalization, and fragility. Claire and Solange are trapped within a master-servant dynamic, one reinforced not only by economic dependence but by psychological conditioning. Their hatred of Madame is real, but their inability to act on it reveals how deeply oppression structures identity. Even in fantasy, they imitate their oppressor, suggesting how the bourgeois subject is internalized and reperformed by the oppressed. Genet's critique is not just of class structure, but of how power replicates itself through mimicry and desire. The maids are not simply victims, They are complicit in maintaining the roles they hate, unable to break free from their dependence on the very structure they seek to destroy. 2. Role play and theatricality. One of the most radical aspects of the play is its meta-theatrical structure. The maids engage in constant performance, never truly themselves. Even their names, Solange and Claire, become fluid roles in their play within a play. Genet blurs the lines between actor and character, role and self, suggesting that identity itself is a construct, a performance scripted by social forces. This theatricality serves several purposes. It critiques bourgeois realism, which pretends to present life as it is. It emphasizes alienation, drawing attention to the fact that all social roles are costumes. It explores how fantasy can both liberate and imprison, allowing expression but preventing action. The constant rehearsals of Madame's murder suggest that repetition without rupture leads to stasis, not revolution. 3. Fantasy, desire, and sadomasochism. Claire and Solange's games are charged with sexual and sadomasochistic energy. They switch roles, humiliate each other, and speak in eroticized language. Their hatred of Madame is often entwined with jealousy and longing. They admire and desire what she has, even as they resent her. Their fantasies of rebellion are also rituals of submission. They degrade themselves, fantasize about punishment, and indulge in masochistic displays of loyalty and obedience. Genet, who was openly homosexual and fascinated by themes of domination and submission, uses these dynamics to explore how power is eroticized, especially when internalized by the oppressed. The characters do not seek mere revenge. They seek transcendence through abasement, a theatrical martyrdom that blurs the line between death and liberation. 4. Identity and doubling. The play is obsessed with doubles and mirrors. Claire and Solange switch roles, dress as each other, and imitate Madame. At times, it's unclear who is who. This destabilization of identity reflects Genet's existential themes. The self is not fixed, but fluid, fractured, and performative. Madame, too, is a kind of double, both distinct and internalized. She exists within the maid's psyche even when off-stage. This multiplicity reflects the condition of the colonized, the oppressed, and the queer subject, always fragmented, always performing, never whole. 5. Rebellion and failure. The maids rehearse Madame's murder repeatedly, but never commit it. Their fantasies always collapse into fear, guilt, or confusion. Claire's suicide at the end is not an act of triumph but of defeat, desperation, or martyrdom. Genet does not romanticize rebellion. Instead, he presents it as trapped in spectacle. The maids are unable to escape the roles assigned to them. Their rebellion becomes ritual rather than revolution, a loop that affirms the very structure it seeks to undermine. This failure is central to the play's power. It reflects the existential condition of trapped consciousness, where action is impossible, and fantasy is the only escape. Symbolism and language. 1. Costumes and mirrors. Costumes are central in the play. Madame's clothes become tools of transformation. When Claire dresses in Madame's gown, she feels momentarily powerful, but also grotesque, reminded of her lower status. Mirrors, literal and symbolic, reflect the inversion of roles, the illusion of identity, and the narcissism of performance. They remind the audience that the stage is a reflection, not a window. 2. The poisoned drink. The poisoned drink, central to the sisters' murder fantasy, represents the unfulfilled potential of rebellion. They mix it repeatedly but never administer it. When Claire finally drinks it herself, it becomes a symbol of self-destruction. Failed revolution. The death of the self trapped in performance. 3. Madame's flowers and perfume. Madame is associated with flowers, perfume, and finery, all symbols of her wealth, femininity, and vanity. These objects become totems of desire and disgust for the maids, reminders of what they lack and what they long for. The sensuality of these symbols adds to the play's feminized violence and erotic undercurrent, reinforcing the theme that beauty and cruelty are often intertwined. Historical and political context. Though abstract and symbolic, the Maids must be read in light of post-war existentialism. The characters reflect Sartrean themes of freedom, bad faith, and the absurd. French class struggle. Genet critiques the bourgeoisie's oblivious cruelty and the internalization of servitude by the working class. Queer identity. Genet, as a gay man in repressive times, explores the psychological cost of performing identity under surveillance. Colonial allegory. Some readings suggest the play reflects the dynamic between colonizer and colonized, where mimicry becomes both resistance and submission, similar to Fanon and Homi Bhabha's theories. Contemporary relevance. The Maids continues to resonate in modern theater and social discourse, particularly around performance and identity politics. The play prefigures Judith Butler's theories of gender performativity and the social construction of identity. Class consciousness and labor exploitation. It offers a timeless critique of how domestic workers are both invisible and indispensable, especially relevant in today's gig economy. Psychological violence and power. In a world where surveillance, role-play, and social masks dominate, Genet's exploration of power through performance remains chillingly current. Conclusion. Jean Genet's The Maids is a hypnotic and disturbing play that defies categorization. It is at once a ritual, a rebellion, a psychological study, and a philosophical parable. Through its stylized language, doubling of roles, and obsessive theatricality, it dismantles the illusions of class, identity, and rebellion. Far from a simple story of oppressed maids killing their mistress, the play is a complex investigation of how power structures infiltrate the psyche, how performance replaces authenticity, and how rebellion is often rendered impotent by internalized structures of domination. In the end, The Maids does not offer a solution. It offers a mirror, one that reflects the absurdity, violence, and yearning that define the human struggle for meaning and liberation.